2.7 is now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed. You're including the Martin renovation. You just added
our entire capital plan.
Yeah, you just added in a third building. Is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no, but it's a building that's being built.
No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
So it's part of the overall work.
But it's not new.
Well, those tensions between President Trump and Fed Chair Jerome Powell playing out in real time in front of the cameras yesterday during the president's visit to the Federal Reserve Building. Joining us right now is someone else who was at that meeting, the Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought. He was with the president yesterday. And Russ, thanks for being with us this morning. We saw how things played out on the cameras. How was it behind the scenes?
It was a very good visit. We learned a lot. The president learned a lot from being able to see it with his own eyes. He's a master builder. He has had great interest in this project. We learned a lot from watching him as a builder, figuring out the types of things that he would never have done in designing this as a renovation, and fundamentally the reasons for why this is costing so much. They had good conversations throughout, and we're not surprised that they don't necessarily agree with every of the viewpoints that we have, but these are the numbers that have come from the Fed, and they are entirely correct. This renovation, a combination of all of the headquarter buildings, is a $3 billion, and the overrun just for those two buildings, we want to talk about just those two, and the Chairman Powell, the overrun just for those two buildings is $1 billion, and there's some unbelievable reasons for why that is so.
Such as?
Such as, number one, they are putting a tunnel in between the buildings. Number two, they're essentially excavating an entire basement approach in an area of the D.C. the National Mall that we know has problems with water. So you have to go very deep. You have to be able to figure out how you're going to prevent future leakage down the road. And they have a enormous parking lot that they are building into the ground that is something that most agencies don't have. For $30 million compared to the $250 million for the parking itself, you could be able to provide parking benefits for the entirety of the Fed. There's largesse everywhere you look, and there are some fundamental reasons for why this thing has become so big. This is not just restoring a building that needed to be restored for its historical purposes, nor is it the only renovation this building has received. That is inaccurate. This building had renovations at the turn of the century, 1999 or so, and so there's been a lot of work done to this building. This is about doing enormous renovations of an entire headquarter building and largely escaping the notice of the public and Congress.
Well, Russell, that's where I wanted to go with this, which is to say, and I'm all for shining a spotlight on things. Transparency is clearly important. The question that I have as a taxpayer and the criticism of the Fed in this context, if the criticism is valid, is whether you ultimately think or can specify that this wasn't done in a transparent way. Meaning, was this all some kind of secret that nobody knew? From my understanding, all of this was disclosed to Congress and to the government. It's obviously we can see it physically happening if you walk by the building. So while it's important that the administration or others, say maybe there's a problem here, or not a problem, but there's cost overruns here, the question about sort of that this is terrible is what?
No, look, the information that we've ascertained, that Congress has ascertained, has become as a result of the oversight process. And we heard yesterday from Chairman Scott the extent to which it's been prying teeth to get this information from the Fed in a way that you would not have if you were trying to get Department of HUD to talk about their building campaign, which hasn't happened, is why they're having to move. And so as a result of that, we've had to rely on FOIA documents. This material hasn't been in their normal financial statements. This is something that has been at every step a huge labor to get information about what's going on, comparing apples to oranges with regard to being able to hide the extent to which those two buildings are overrun. The totality of this renovation project, begun a number of years ago, approved in 2021, is a $3.1 billion. It is the same levels of if you include all of the Palace of Versailles, if you include all of the congressional buildings from the dawn of this republic to now, this building equals that. That is what we are drawing attention to. And the other thing I would just say is the extent to which they continue to say, look, we've made these changes. They may have made some, but they're still relying on much of the same design. They talk about, oh, there's no private dining rooms. There are meal-ready meeting rooms. Meal-ready meeting rooms are private dining rooms for the executives of the Federal Reserve. And so that is the kind of things we're trying to get to the bottom of. The National Capital Planning Commission will be very involved in continuing to ask questions. But I think what you heard from the president yesterday is, like, we want to get this thing done. This is not an attempt to say this project should be halted permanently. We want to get it done, and we want to get it done as cheaply and efficiently as possible.
Right.
I think it gets to the degree to the fiscal mismanagement of the Fed.
Right, but Russell, part of what I think a lot of the public sees, and even the investor class thinks, is that this is a pretext to either try to fire the Fed chair or to pressure him effectively to lower rates, and that this is sort of a leverage point in a larger discussion and debate, or a way to distract from other issues that maybe the president's dealing with at the White House. So how do you see that?
You can only answer the question so many times, and the president has done that. He's asked repeatedly, do you intend to fire the Fed chairman? He said, no, it's not likely. I have no intention of doing that right now. And this is about ensuring that the Fed has the accountability of the American people knowing what's going on. Does the president have viewpoints? Yes, he does have viewpoints. The American people get to have a say in what they believe the Fed should do. The president believes that the American people, as the person that is elected on their entire behalf, get to have a say in whether rates are lower. And so if you're at the Fed and you're getting questions about both, of course you're going to answer to both of those issues. But it's also true that the Fed needs to be accountable for things that are beyond monetary policy. They're building their ability to transmit remittances back to the Treasury that impact our deficit, the extent to which their regulatory activities are supposed to go through a regulatory review process, of which they are not complying right now. So there's a whole host of issues with regard to the Fed, and we want to make sure that those questions get answered over time. This is not a pressure campaign on the Fed chairman.